folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick. We're back to talk about the second half of that game against the Titans. And here to join me on talk about the defense is James Ogden of UK Ravens. James, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Ken. How are you?
I've got no complaints. Fantastic first episode. So appreciate this. And of course, we went overboard on a fairly limited number of defensive plays in that first half, but I think we pulled together a lot of the common threads in this game. Some great edge play by Malik Harrison, some fine play by Patrick Queen flying all over the field, some instincts from various players, including Marcus Williams, a very nice play in the first half, some great play by Justin Madubuike, which will keep showing up. But please go download that episode. You really want to hear that. James has some marvelous points to make, particularly about characteristics shown in the draft originally that really came out in this game as well. That's exceptional. James, if you don't know, has a draft guide he puts out annually that's very good. I would highly recommend it, and really appreciate you being on for this again, James.
No problem, Ken. Really enjoying it.
Okay, well, we'll go a little faster probably in this half, but I do appreciate the extra time you're spending on me. So we're going to jump right back into this play-by-play version we've been doing, and there'll be a little bit of wrap-up at the end where we tie some threads together with some pass rush stuff and whatnot, but we're going to go play-by-play pretty quickly here. Quarter 3, 15 minutes. The Titans get the ball coming right out in the second half. We got another really nice play by Madubuike, bowling, then shedding the right guard Brunskill. That's the ex-49er to tackle Tyjae Spears for a 2-yard gain.
Yeah, and this again, we talked about Madubuike sort of ad nauseum in the first part, and this is another great example of his superior play against the run. I'm a big Tyjae Spears fan. Was a huge fan of his coming out of Tulane this year, and thought he's going to be special. I'm sure we're going to talk about his play later on, but with the catch and run. But again, it just showed that this was this play, I think, just more so showed that this was a bit of a mismatch in terms of the Titans' offensive line going up against Madubuike. Wasn't necessarily outstanding. It was outstanding play from Madubuike, but it was a one-on-one beat where he gets his hands in fast, inside, well placed, powerful. Here, actually, he's in utter control of the point of attack. Here, he could go if Spears decides to break it outside. Madubuike is going to take the outside lane, and he's going to have that too. So it was a dominance at the line of scrimmage that Madubuike showed throughout the game.
Brunskill, when he was with the 49ers, a hell of an offensive line, I thought. It's kind of a sixth offensive lineman. They would bring him in. I think they even played him at left tackle some, but he definitely performed well for them. Maybe you might think of him a little bit like Patrick McCary for this team in terms of his versatility to play a lot of different positions, but not a terrible offensive lineman that Madubuike is beating there is my point.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, it's it shows the level of play that Madubuike has risen to over the recent weeks of the season.
Let's jump ahead 14-18, a 2nd and 8 play. Beautiful spin move here by Van Noy to beat the left tackle Dillard inside for a pressure. Tannehill gets the ball off to Westbrook-Akine for a 6-yard gain, 5+1, 2 circle. 2 circle means between the numbers and the left hash. Very nice fast downhill tackle by Roquan Smith. We're seeing very little yak on the balls headed his way this year.
Yeah, and you're sort of going to, in the second half when you dominate the first half as much as you have, you're going to take that kind of play all day long. That quick pressure, it's not something that's going to necessarily get completed a high percentage of times. And as you say, Roquan just cleaning that up to make sure there's no extra yardage there.
On this 3rd and 2 play that came up, a 4-1 pressure in this case, so they drop one guy off. That's what that means in my notation here. And a beautiful stunt for Van Noy through the right A-gap for the initial pressure. And then 92 had kind of a slow bowl of the left tackle Dillard. Then it became faster, and he overran him. A steamroller him is probably the correct term here for a sack -7.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think Travis Jones probably could have done a slightly better job than he did with the pick. It sort of potentially left the center free to get Van Noy, but Van Noy was just too clever for the center and still got around the edge of the center to get the pressure. But you're right, Madubuike again, just a theme, isn't it, that we're talking about is like that explosive power, that athleticism, to be able to line him up outside like that, and have enough potential to threaten around the edge for him to be able to come through an offensive tackle like that with the slow start, but then sort of building up with that power. Just really impressive from him.
Third and 2 play, and they're off the field just like that. They had a bunch of third and shorts in this game. It wasn't like their 1 for 9 was on a bunch of 3rd and 11, 3rd and 18s. They had a couple of those, but it was a lot of 3rd and short as well where the Ravens denied it. All right, jump ahead. Quarter 3, 11:55. They get the ball back. This is like a rare play, and there weren't too many, honestly, in this game. Robinson wasn't in for it. He was in for some run plays where he held the left edge fairly well versus the tight end. 96 was blocked on the play, Washington, by the left guard Skoronski. The center and right guard blocked Michael Pierce, which is he's not been too blockable this year, honestly. And then the center also comboed to get Roquan Smith in level 2. So that's not what you want, is those two linemen taking out those two Ravens defensive pieces to lead what is a 5-yard run. And in the whole context of today, it wasn't a huge play. It just was a fairly well blocked play, I thought, by the Titans.
Yeah, I agree. And in some ways, the Ravens kind of got lucky that Michael Pierce, he was a little bit off balance and potentially could have ended up in the turf, but managed to stay on his feet and get across and make the tackle. But otherwise, I agree with you. That was a pretty well blocked up play. And the seal that they had on Roquan Smith would have caused some issues if Pierce hadn't got across to make that play. I think that would have been a decent sized gain from Henry, if not.
Move ahead to the next play, quarter 3, 11-16, a 4-1 pass rush, one guy again dropping off the line of scrimmage. 92 with a kind of a slow bull against the right guard, Brunskill. Was making progress against him the whole way. It just wasn't the kind of fast progress that was going to lead to a 3-second pressure. But he did finally get off, flushed Tannehill to the right, and eventually dragged him to the turf just as Tannehill was throwing the ball out of bounds.
Yeah, and what's great about this in terms of Madubuike is it sort of shows the development of his game as a pass rusher, is that he's able to continue to fight with his hands. This was one where he has remarkable power in his hands, but they've not always been used to great effect. But in this instance, he's able to sort of reset his feet and use that big right paw and get himself free. I felt like this was I'm certainly not. I wouldn't have called. I'm sure you didn't chart this as ample time and space, but.
Yes.
It was. Right. Okay. And as the day goes, this felt like it definitely, even if it didn't, wasn't ample time and space in the measure. It felt like it for Tannehill for the way his day had gone at this point so far.
Yeah. Yeah. He had time and he kind of held on to the ball a little longer. I don't blame him. I mean, he had room to roll out and get rid of it. And so I never say it's the wrong thing if you end up getting rid of the ball with an incomplete. Okay, 11:09 comes up, 3rd and 5. Pierce, stunting pass, Skoronski, outside for a fast quarterback hit. Now, this is the play that just really has Ravens fans shaking their head, because I thought Michael Pierce did a really good job not only flattening Tannehill with kind of a wonderful form tackle, but also not putting his whole body weight down on Tannehill. It certainly wasn't a late hit by any measure. It wasn't close to 2 steps, but it was more like 1/4 of a step, after he unloaded the football. Then we turned into this disagreement in the broadcast booth between Eisen and Warner over whether or not it was a roughing the passer play. And guess which side Kurt Warner was on?
It's not hard to guess.
Yeah.
There's no way there's just no way this is a penalty. It's the for Ravens fans. What was great about this weekend, sort of meeting other UK Ravens and European Ravens fans, is that many of them have been fans as long as I have, sort of 20 years of the Ravens. And we actually had the Super Bowl, the 2000 Super Bowl playing in one of our parties.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and the thing that strikes me about this play is that the laws of the game have changed so much over the years, but to consider this play a kind of play that needs to be outlawed is just it's staggering to me. Like he did there was literally nothing else Michael Pierce could have done on this play. If this play is a penalty, there will never ever be another quarterback hit on a play as long as the NFL is in existence.
It's extremely frustrating, and Collinsworth, I think, has often made the point that if you see the way these games look when you have backup quarterbacks in there, you understand why they want to protect the quarterback. Well, it's true, but we also want to see good football. And one of the nice things to see is to knock the other guy's quarterback out of the game. And passing should not be a zero risk affair. There should be limits to offense the way there are limits to playing good defense. And I'm very frustrated by it. And the relationship between roughing the passer calls and quarterback hits, which are where roughing the passer calls typically occur. They don't typically occur on a sack. It's usually on a quarterback hit. It's just not worked in the Ravens' favor in recent years at all.
No, it really hasn't. And this one especially. I wonder if there's something about the fact that there's I'm not trying not to give them an excuse or anything here, the referees, but whether there's a thing about a big nose tackle sort of careering into a quarterback, and this is a guy who's going to land on him whether he tries to or not, and it's sort of but it just you can't justify it anyway. Really,
I thought if anything, he made an effort not to do that. Anyway, the point I'll make is no way in hell is Michael Pierce going to get fined for this. If he gets even a small fine from the league for this penalty, it would be thoroughly unjustified. And in fact, I think they ought to really send a message to the officials in this case, not fine him, then talk to them and probably issue a downgrade on that. There is a whole system of downgrades, by the way, that's working behind the scenes where these officials are getting scored. And if they have enough downgrades, they'll ultimately not be retained. Okay, now we've seen some guys in the league for a long time. You figure, how are these guys not, were they hired under Project Bootstrap such that they can't possibly be fired? But yes, there is, they can eventually be fired for bad officiating. Anyway, let's move ahead. All it takes, of course, is one bad roughing the passer penalty, and the very next play can put you in a deep hole. 11:04, that happened. Henry took a direct snap, faked a reverse to Tyjae Spears. By the way, great play design and the pony use of the pony backfield there. They got good blocks from their tight ends, two of them, to take care of Harrison. We had Brunskill and Hubbard took care of Washington on the play. We had Skoronski slowing down Pierce, and that created all the space that Henry needed to go RR 63 on this play, 63-yard run up the right sideline, really between a lot of defensive backs and linebackers who it wasn't that they weren't interested. It was that they were not fast enough really to get to the play. Some of them had probably been manipulated a little bit by the initial reverse to Spears.
Yeah, it's funny. If you listen to the first part of the podcast, we both sort of waxed lyrical about Patrick Queen and Justin Madubuike, both of whom were fooled really hook, line, and sinker by this play. Both of them completely taken out of the play, worrying about Tyjae Spears, which is fair enough, and they were sort of prescient given what Spears did later on in the game. But they were both of the Ravens' sort of key run stuffers through this game were taken out of this play by the play design, and it created that avenue for Derrick Henry to kind of waltz through. And obviously Waltz is a bit unfair on Henry. He's got a lot of speed, and that was a tough guy to stop. And obviously Marcus Williams was sort of sidled up to him, and in the end, so almost sacrificed himself to prevent the touchdown there, because I'm pretty sure that was what sort of ended his day, was having to make that tackle, even though I think he stayed in for a little bit longer.
Yeah, he played on, and he actually was on Stone's interception. He was knocked out of the game, but yeah, he certainly exposed to the world that he was playing with one arm on that play, and that was what it was. So anyway, that gave the Titans a 1st and 9 opportunity with 10:17 to go. Now, just to get back on something we mentioned in the first show, the Titans had made 23 of their previous 24 goal-to-go opportunities into touchdowns, and Eisen actually mentioned partway through this series that this had been the longest streak of this century. And I think that maybe in games, because the last time they missed was in week 11 or something of last year against Green Bay. And it might be a dozen games or so that they'd been without missing one. But they would end up missing it. It started with a nice bull then shed by Travis Jones of Skoronski to tackle Tajay Spears for no gain on the first play.
Yeah, this was really nice from Travis Jones. We sort of talked in the first half about the fact that him and Tavius Robinson are sort of on the early stages of their developmental curve as defensive linemen. Travis Jones specifically has shown flashes, specifically in the preseasons, but has also shown a few flashes during the regular season. This was a really nice example of what you could potentially get from Travis Jones as he continues to develop, which is really good hand placement, perfect hand placement on this play, and immediately sort of jacks up that offensive lineman. He's first on with his hands. The burst upfield is very good, and it's really him. It's the play is over before anyone else. You can see at the end of the play, Smith and Queen and others desperate to get involved, but Travis Jones has already solved the problem.
Taking care of business. Move ahead to 9:36, 2nd and 9, a 4-1 pass rush on this play. Matabike bowled the left guard Skoronski again for a pressure, and Tannehill overthrew Hopkins in the end zone, 15 yards on the left sideline with Darby this time in tight coverage. So we did not hear Darby's name called a lot. I think that's a good thing, basically. If you've got, particularly if you're in a single high, Darby is kind of exposed and could be one of the guys who would give you trouble. But in this case, he was right there.
Yeah, the Ravens don't trail very much. So Marlon Humphrey was not on DeAndre Hopkins the entirety of this game. They will not trail receivers. Chase receivers. So Marlon Humphrey wasn't on Hopkins for the entirety of this game and still is on a snap count. So Darby definitely had to have his fair share of coverage on DeAndre Hopkins. And so that was a nice play from him, completely in phase. There was no chance of that ball getting completed. There was nowhere Tannehill could put that in the end zone for it to be completed. And combined with the Matabike pressure is what sort of killed that play.
Got almost a similar look on the next play, 3rd and 9, a 6-0 pass rush, by the way, first of all, and the ball's out quickly. So once again, they tried numbers, didn't really work because Tannehill got the ball out quickly. You mentioned a 7-0 pass rush in the first half that went for about an 11-yard gain over the middle. In this case, Tannehill overthrew the ball well out of the end zone on the left side of the end zone for Hopkins. And, of course, I guess it was the back judge threw the flag there. It might have been the side judge, and picked it up eventually. The officials talked about it, picked it up as being too far out of bounds, and that was certainly the right call. That ball was landed 10 yards out of bounds?
Yeah, 100% the right call. What was strange was that it came after the play so it was, as you said, it was a very similar look, and it was slightly different trajectory of ball, but it was sort of in the same vicinity.
Right.
And I had a weird thing where I was kind of like, that didn't look like it was that far out of bounds. And I think I was remembering the play previously rather than this play. When it came up on the replay screens, it was quite obvious that was definitely uncatchable. Interestingly, though, was one of the sort of few instances where I think if it hadn't been uncatchable, that would have been a kind of fair enough flag to have thrown on that play.
Yeah, I agree on that. So that anyway forced the field goal and ended the Titans' streak of success in goal-to-go situations. They get the ball back, 8:37 left in the third. They got a 1st and 15 after a false start. Now, they got the ball back on the interception where Bateman's effort is called into question. So we'll talk about that on the offensive shows, particularly, but frustrating, obviously, play. Sets them up inside the red zone right away. So they got a false start on the first play. The very first play was thrown into the end zone. Down at about the 5-yard line, and convergence of players here. Obviously, a big hit from Stevens to try and dislodge the ball, and then an even bigger hit and a very unfortunate helmet-to-helmet shot from Hamilton that resulted eventually in the disqualification.
Yeah, and it's hard to get into this too much, I suppose, isn't it? But because I'm not a rules expert, but it doesn't. The tough one with this one is it felt for me like it was a flag, rule book. But for me, it just doesn't feel. There are so few ejections in the NFL. This one did not feel like it was egregious enough to be an ejection. I don't think you can really. I'm not sure there was malicious intent there. I think there was too much ambiguity because of the fact that the football was in the area. And I suspect that is what Cal Hamilton was going for. There's probably a coaching point there for him in the future. But for me, I don't agree that this was an ejection. And I know we have purple tinted specs on and maybe that's what the case is, but it just doesn't feel right to me, the ejection.
Well, here, I think there's actually a good thing going on. The ejection was called from New York. Now, in theory, that should create a consistency to these calls. And that's what I want. I don't want crews individually making the choices on ejection. I basically want 100% of ejection decisions made from New York. Okay. And no matter what you say, they're going to take longer. They're going to look at that for longer. They're going to make a decision and they can communicate with the officials and call it there. If they need to collect some information from the officials, they can do it. One of the things that was pointed out by somebody who was at the game, and I didn't notice this, was that Hamilton kicked the flag. Now, I'm not sure if that happened after or before the disqualification, but if it's before, did that potentially have anything to do with it?
That possibly, maybe that did have something to do with it. I did not notice that. Frustrating still if it did, I suppose, because it just, it's funny when you watch the all 22 of it, the end zone angle is far less egregious. Like it looks like a guy sort of coming across to try and make the play. And obviously that's not going to show you the helmet contact, but it just did not feel like a play that should rise to the level of an ejection. But I'm with you in the sense that I would like consistency in those and not have crews calling on the field. But it just doesn't chime well with, as someone who watches college regularly as well, you see so many ejections in college. It's just not the same in the NFL. It seems like the standard, it feels a lot higher for that to happen. And it just didn't feel like one for me.
Well, the good news is Tom Pelissero is reporting that Hamilton is not going to be suspended for this. So that at least is something. And he'll be back next week, and the Ravens will certainly need him playing the Lions and as short at safety as they seem to be right now. Very next play, and it was after a penalty the last time, after a personal foul. Henry again, RM 15 for the touchdown. Missed tackle by Williams at about 8 yards. He just kind of slaps at Henry as he's moving by. It's really nothing he could do. I mean, he's in position to make the tackle. He doesn't do it. And unfortunate, but obviously Williams should not be on the field at this point if he really can't tackle at all. I can't believe that there's enough that he can do for the Ravens on the back end, as great as he is as a ball hawk, that would justify him being back there without the use of one arm.
No, and I like the interesting thing about it. So 100% would agree with you. Like, I'm not sure there's a whole lot of use for him in this instance. This is missing the tackle. The other thing I would say about this play is it immediately shows what happens with the absence of Cal Hamilton on that defense, who we don't know where he would have lined up on that play, but there's a chance that would have been him over that side of the formation. The other thing to mention on this play, I think, was at the line of scrimmage at the point of attack where Travis Jones falls down and Tavius Robinson's edge set is not particularly effective. And so there is a gaping hole at the line of scrimmage for Derrick Henry to run through. And if you're going to give him that kind of ramp up at the line of scrimmage where he's able to get up to speed so quickly without so much as traffic to kind of slow him down, you're asking for trouble. And there was a couple of instances, as I mentioned in the first part, where the Titans had some success running at Tavius Robinson, Travis Jones combination on one side of the line, and the Ravens had sort of it sort of did expose a little bit the lack of defensive line depth for the Ravens, of competent defensive line depth for the Ravens if they do run into some injuries on that line, as they did in this game with right. Brent Urban.
So this is a combination of an interior guy and an edge guy too, an edge setter. They've relied on a little bit this year. The other guy who made a really nice play on this, you got to give credit to the Titans where credit is due, is the center 55 made a very nice combination block on Pierce, and that helped him get him off his pins, and then on Queen in level 2.
Yeah, Brewer has been like one of their better offensive linemen through the season so far, and yeah, he had a nice play here. I agree with you.
Okay, all right, that's the first rushing touchdown the Ravens had allowed all year. It makes it a football game, unfortunately, again, and we weren't particularly happy about that at that point. They get the ball back again with 6:49 left in the third. We noticed that Tannehill is back on the field with his foot taped at this point, so I think he was injured on the Michael Pierce play because he seemed to be hobbling off. After that, stayed in without tape, and then this time around now he's got the tape job on. But we have a Tyjae Spears 12-yard run left. Some nice blocks set it up, including Skoronski pancaking Michael Pierce. This is bad. This is a bunch of bad stuff. Petit Frere, who's in now, replacing Dillard at left tackle, pancaked Van Noy, and Brewer blocked Roquan Smith in level 2 to lead that 12-yard run.
Yeah, and Tyjae Spears, I mentioned in part 1, I was a huge fan of him coming out of Tulane. And this was an interesting run because you do not need to give Tyjae Spears very much on the edge for him to turn it into a big game. Like the lateral cut ability that he has, he will transform a run perpendicular to the line of scrimmage into getting vertical in just the least amount of time and space I've seen from a prospect coming out of college in a long, long time. Like it's scary how quickly he is able to turn upfield. And the Ravens in this instance gave him a huge corridor to turn upfield that he didn't have to remotely use any of the weapons that he used on the run, on the catch and run later on. So you just can't give that kind of space to a back like Spears out on the edge. And in some ways, the Ravens, it was a nice play from Roquan Smith coming in from behind to finish that play off. Otherwise, there could have been a lot more yardage there for Spears.
Okay, we got the next play. We have another 1st and 10, obviously. Another one of these shovel passes that's forward. So it actually went down to a pass play for Tannehill's efforts, and a pass left for 9. That's -4 plus 13 on that left side. One of the few times where a tight end actually blocked Harrison well in the game. This was 88. That's Wesco, right? I think so. Blocked him, and then Petit Frere made a nice combination block on Washington, and then on Roquan Smith to help lead that play for 9 yards.
Yeah, and this was as you mentioned, one of those plays that sort of, I know this was technically a pass, but with the toss, another one where the Titans were able to sort of get a run blocked up, and you sort of started to wonder whether the tide was turning a little bit at this point, and started to get a little bit nervous, turning in our seats a bit.
Very, very concerned about it. That brought up 2nd and 1. Really nice play from Roquan Smith, rushing through a gap, vacated by Skoronski to move to level 2. This is one of these plays. There's a guard bubble on that side. He has to kind of make a decision as where am I going to set to make my most effective block? And oftentimes guards get excited. They move into level 2 quickly. A linebacker then is reacting and moving to that gap at the same time. And in this case, it was Smith taking down Henry again now for a no gain at the line of scrimmage and bringing up 3rd and 1.
Yeah, and again, something that you mentioned in part 1 was the kind of the improvement in the tackling by Patrick Queen. I think that was on show here, where sort of the attempt to make a form tackle was really crucial at this point, because if you'd have gone in, he sort of had to slide down slightly and tackle Henry around the calves, which can be a very difficult thing to do if you're not coming in with originally with a kind of form tackle attempt. So kind of liked the way he went about his business there with this one.
All right, brings up 3rd and 1, a 4-0 pass rush. They're still sticking with regulation pressures here. There's no blitz coming from level 2, but we had Michael Pierce bold the left guard Skoronski for the pressure, and Tannehill put it up for Okonkwo, about 28 yards down the right sideline, undercut by Geno Stone. And this is a great thing about Geno. He's been great at undercuts. Look at the Cincinnati game. Look at this game. He's been great playing for the overthrow. That was his third interception. He's been a great loose bracket player generally in that he doesn't feel like he ever has to go for the midsection of the receiver when he's on the back end. You look at some pass rating safeties. They haven't been able to get away from that all the time. But he's a great loose bracket safety. Really does it well. Anyway, this happened to be an undercut. Another fine interception by him. One of the really big plays of the game. Turns it around with a 24-yard return. And unfortunately, this is the play where Marcus Williams is on the turf at the end. And I didn't know what was wrong, but I would have assumed it was something with his arms.
Yeah, it was a shame, wasn't it? This was the one where Marcus Williams went out. I think I would agree with you on Geno. Sorry, I also misspoke on the last play because I remembered the play wrong. It was Roquan Smith who was making the tackle, wasn't it? Not Patrick Queen. It was another play where Queen made that form tackle. But on this one specifically, Geno Stone was just. I love the play in this because basically that Okonkwo is streaking down the seam. He is away from Marlon Humphrey, and so Geno Stone does his job and comes across and covers that. And to sort of anticipate in the way he did and step across an undercut was a phenomenal play from him. And as I've mentioned before, his trigger, his intelligence, his football intelligence, the way he reads the game is really impressive, and it allows him to make plays like that. Oh, Ken, you're on mute.
Thank you. Happens at least once an episode. Quarter 4, 12:49. They get the ball back, but now Malik Willis at quarterback, and it is a different football game at this point, folks. So shockingly, they try a play-action play, but Malik Willis, because he's a very mobile quarterback, we have Robinson. Davis Robinson is not really fooled on the play, and doesn't get a pressure off, but the play has to be out quickly. And throw goes to number 15. So that's Westbrook Akina for 9 yards. Nice quick tackle from Yasin at this point. Yasin played most of the fourth quarter of this game, by the way, when the Ravens were in nickel a lot. Darby played his time mostly at the end of the first half.
Yeah, it was interesting. The usage of Yasin has been interesting. I haven't watched enough of Yasin to sort of understand why that's the case, but yeah, as you mentioned, sort of in the fourth quarter, it was a strange one when Willis trotted out. I didn't actually even see him trot out. I just saw him suddenly playing the position and wondered what on earth had happened there. This was a real turning point in the game. You felt like there was a chance with the way that the Titans had started to run the football, that with Tannehill in there doing just enough, they may have hauled themselves back into this game. But this Ravens defense going up against a Malik Willis who it's funny, he's kind of won the job back as the backup there in Tennessee. And I'd be surprised if he gets to enter into the game again after this performance. I think they'll probably want to see what they have from Will Levis now. So interesting sort of, from the Titans. And I suppose I think that this was a nice little drive starter for him, but was sort of one of the few remaining positive plays that the Titans had in the game.
Yeah, and what they had the remainder that was positive, it really wasn't Malik Willis. It was Tyjae Spears making a big play. But I would agree with you. I think it would make all kinds of sense for them to move forward. They obviously do not have tremendous confidence in Willis to even go after Levis.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm not surprised about that. I think both of the picks in the draft were a little perplexing, and I think they will probably look back on some of those. Willis probably less egregious than the Levis pick, actually, and they may look back on those picks in the future and sort of regret sort of taking a second. Well, I thought Levis was a lot further down than a second tier quarterback in this last draft, but it'll well end up being a very interesting decision. I think when you look at potentially some of the talent that will have ended up going after him to have double dipped on a quarterback that I felt was very flawed coming in.
Right. Very, very floor, very high, meaning a low ceiling, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Okay. So 2nd and 1, they ran a stretch left that Henry was able to get outside of Robinson on this play. Did not really hold that left edge. Missed tackle by Millette, which we did have a chance to get him in the backfield at -1. But then he was tackled by Humphrey for a 2-yard gain. Honestly, pretty good damage control considering a 2nd and 1 play.
Yeah, and nice to see Marlon coming up, and we saw a few times in this game making some hits and proving that he's going to continue to be the physical corner he is despite the early season injury.
Very next play, we have Willis in the 1st and 10, scramble left from ample time and space. They had a clean pocket, ran left for 3, slid down in front of Patrick Queen. Good restraint by Queen not to hit him there, and nice that his presence made Willis want to slide, which was good as well. Yeah,
and I would agree with you there. It was nice the sort of way the Titans tried to get Willis moving in this game in terms of the play action on the first play with the nice drive starter, and then sort of shifting the pocket slightly on this play, but just. Yeah, I suppose maybe I'll try and revise my previous statement and not be as harsh on the quarterbacks. There is a challenge with this Tennessee offense that the lack of weapons is sort of crippling to them and to a quarterback in this offense. So, maybe I'm being a little bit unfair on them there. And it's tough. Tannehill found it tough sledding against this Ravens defense as well. So.
All right, 2nd and 7, a really good play on the interior line here for both Washington and Travis Jones, but Washington slipped the block of the left tackle Petit Frere and the tight end as well, Wesco, to tackle Henry for a loss of 1. We also had really good penetration from Travis Jones off an initial double team from, that was Skoronski and the center Brewer.
Yeah, and a nice example of the sort of thing I was talking about earlier with Broderick Washington, where he's able to, be just a really a really competent run defender, and exactly what the Ravens need from him. And again, a little more of a flash from Travis Jones, which I was also talking about earlier too.
9:57 remaining, 3rd and 8. Matabike Bulls then sheds the left guard Skoronski outside for a flush. Doesn't turn up as a pressure on my sheet, probably would on PFF's. I think that's the way they scored them when they end up being run plays. But first of all, you want to get a flush left if you have your choice between a flush right and a flush left of a right-handed quarterback. So Willis is flush to the left. He runs out there, is cleaned up by Smith and Queen to force a punt. Really nice plays, and Queen had 3 of these drive-ending plays where he closed out a drive.
Yeah, and his initial instinct here was to flush right. But there was yet another nice pick play by Van Noy that freed up Michael Pierce around the edge. And obviously Malik Bliss did not fancy running headlong into Michael Pierce, and so had to flush left. So he was sort of forced initially off his spot by that great rush from Matabike, which, when you look at the position he puts Skoronski in, it's like it's the thing that offensive linemen's nightmares are made of, where he's sort of stood bolt upright with his knees bent ever so slightly backwards and his arm cocked and bent around Matabike with just no chance of any recovery from that situation. So, another really nice play from Matabike.
So after this, the Titans punt, the Ravens kick a field goal to finally go up by 11 again, and you feel a little bit more secure about things. The Titans get a chance to run out the clock on themselves. They pretty much do it. They get the ball back with 4:16 left, and the Ravens are like a cat toying with a mouse at this point. Their own worst enemy in some ways. They let them continue to survive with a number of penalties. We'll go through this drive fairly quickly because I know you're on a little bit of a time budget here, but we'll go a little bit faster than we have been so far. First play, a 4-0 pass rush, a nice stunt from Clowney, who is held up.
Aaron Rodgers' season is officially over, but yours has just begun at MyBookie. NFL, college ball, and the brand new cash-out system gives you options to bet and win all season long. First 2 legs of your parlay hit? Cash out early and place another bet, or let it ride for a chance at a bigger payday. Join us at MyBookie for an entire season filled with daily odd boosts, same-game parlays, and huge prize pool contests. Right now, MyBookie has a no-strings-attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quick. Use the promo code RAVENS on your first deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly credited to your MyBookie account. That's promo code RAVENS to claim your cash bonus now. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. With the busy fall season already in swing, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle. Guys, I've shared moving. I was using this for all my meals. Now I'm working from home. Guess what? Microwaves in the other room. I'm using this for all my meals. Factor is how I get through my lunch day every day. But they've got breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I haven't tried the breakfast ones yet, but why not? I think I might add that to my next order. But I love them for lunch. Plus, they've got new autumn fall flavors out right now for limited time, featuring seasonal veggies like cranberry, pecan chicken, and apple Dijon pork chops. And again, just like everything else, they're ready in just 2 minutes. They'll satisfy your fall cravings during this busy season without the hassle. So go ahead and level up with Gourmet Plus options as well, prepared to perfection by chefs and ready to eat in record time. Treat yourself to upscale meals with premium ingredients like broccoli, leeks, truffle butter, and asparagus. Head to factormeals.com/Ravens50 and use the code RAVENS50 to get 50% off. That's code RAVENS50 at factormeals.com/Ravens50 to get 50% off your Factor meal today.
Initially by the right guard, Brunskill, but when Van Noy beat the left tackle, Petit Frere inside for a fast pressure, he missed the sack at -7. Clowney cleans him up, runs him down for a sack -9. Nice to see Clowney get the cleanup. And he hasn't always been getting the cleanups. He's been missing some initial chances or getting the initial pressure so someone else can clean up. But this is a case where he's actually the finisher of this one.
Yeah, and as we mentioned earlier, this was a nice game for Clowney too, in terms of his play in general, in terms of getting pressure and looking at the way he's sort of winning. So, yeah, I agree. Nice for him to sort of get the cleanup here. And yet again, another example of how the rush plan from the Ravens in this game was really, really working and was really effective.
Terrific stuff. 2nd and 19. Humphrey called for an illegal contact on Westbrook-Akina. Very much a gift first down there. And I've had this situation occur in Ravens games before where you just know they're going to pile up a great sack total. It's just a matter of letting the other team get enough first downs, ancillary to the sacks that are occurring. And they end up sacking the quarterback 4 times on this one drive, which that's very hard to do. It's just extremely hard to put that together. And they did it, I believe they did it on 4 separate series within the drive. So meaning 4 separate sets of downs within the drives, which is even that much harder, but gave them a first down here on the Humphrey penalty.
Yeah, really frustrating at this point, wasn't it? That it just did not look like there was much in this Titans offense, and yeah, to give them a first down in this instance was frustrating.
All right, next play we have Clowney stunting, then shedding the right guard Brunskill for a pressure. Well, he flushes 7 from the pocket for a run left for 11. This is one of Willis's first few only good plays himself of the day, but running for 11 here. A little bit of a breakdown there. Clowney did his job to get the pressure, but obviously other players were not prepared to contain Willis. Yeah,
and this was the one of the instances where the stunts really hurt them, and obviously that's because of Willis's ability to create out of nothing and to run from the pocket. But Van Noy really just vacated his lane entirely, and the stunt just didn't work in this instance because of Willis's mobility.
You live by the stunt, you die by the stunt. The stunt created the pressure too, so it's only good. Yeah. Willis just such a trouble with any sort of seeing color in this game that he I think you're better off taking your chances. And obviously, at this point in the game, when you got 11-point lead, every run play that the opponent runs, you're thrilled with, because it's not a pass play that's going to hurt you as much. And even an 11-yard run from Willis, they can't be that upset about. 321, you got a 4-0 ATS opportunity. One of the few he got. He used it so well to throw a 6-yard pass to Phillips, 5+1. Little rub play. Mollett probably got rubbed more than he needed to on the play, but he was obviously trying to avoid contact with crossing receivers there, and give up this little play that was honestly not very much.
Yeah, Willis was really twitchy on this play, given that, he did have that ample time and space. It was almost like Madubuike got two steps beyond the line of scrimmage, and Willis was just got the ball out of there fast. It was, as you mentioned before, sort of a lot of struggle with any kind of color in his face, and this wasn't even really in his face, and he got it out there quickly. 2nd
and 4 play comes up, neutral zone infraction. I think Petit Frere picked it up on Clowney. He's the one who moved and pointed, and Clowney gets another opportunity for another sack. Obviously, coming up out of that, because that creates another 1st and 10. I'll just move forward. 251. Clowney bulls Petit Frere for a fast pressure, flushed 7 left, and Willis then got cleaned up by Madubuike for an S-8.
Yeah, it was nice to see Madubuike get the cleanup here as well, actually, because he'd sort of done so much work to get to this point in the game, and to get him a nice easy sack there. I'm sure Clowney enjoyed giving him that.
I'm sure Clowney enjoys giving away all of these sacks. Yeah. A good job, certainly, by everyone. 2:19 left in the game. This is one of the really cool plays in the game. 2nd and 18. 4-0, ample time and space. Willis threw to Okonkwo for an 11-yard gain. Now, 8 yards, and Okonkwo was on the ground because he had to come back for the football, not really dive for it, but go down for it. And then he's on the ground, and he's kind of waits for a second to get touched down by Roquan, who won't do it, and just stands up around him. One of the headiest plays you'll ever see. Allows him to get up, takes 3 extra yards. Roquan takes him down again, and the clock runs down to the 2-minute warning. Warner says, I don't know what he's trying to do there. Eisen says, I see what he's trying to do. Not in these same words. He's trying to get it to the 2-minute warning. One of the greatest demonstrations of on-field awareness you'll ever see. And here's, I want to just get your opinion on this. If Roquan Smith can do that, and I think you can expect Roquan Smith to be smart enough to do that, how can we ever accept the fact that any player fails to take a knee in a situation that demands it? Meaning, wants to score a touchdown instead of taking a knee is the most common one. We've had twice in the last 3 years, the Ravens have been impacted by opposing receivers going in the end zone when a kneel would have won the game. Twice.
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? Like the level of this, of the level of, like, you often, when you're evaluating players, you're looking at processing mainly in terms of the like mental side of the game and how quickly they're able to understand something. This isn't processing. This is just flat out football intelligence.
Yeah.
Like knowing the situation. And the level is such that I would agree with you. It's very hard to watch this play and accept the kind of, because the level of football intelligence required for what you've mentioned is much lower than the level that Roquan has demonstrated here.
That's exactly. This is like a level 3 play.
Yeah.
The other things, when you're supposed to take the kneel as a wide receiver, it's a level 1 play. They still never do it.
Yeah.
The information is either not on the field, which is probably their claim, or honestly, there's probably some selfishness involved that receivers want to score. And last thing they want to think about is take a knee. Why should I have to do that? Let's let the defense get out there.
Yeah, and also the element of like they're in control because they have the ball. Like there's more of a control, I feel, as an offensive player there, because you have the ball. You're the one who's dictating the play here. Roquan Smith here has to, in some instances, take it's only a very tiny gamble, but a gamble. He isn't like he's not in control of this play, although he is entirely. So it's a real high level. It is a really high level scout. I was so impressed with it when I saw it live.
The other reason why it's not just level 2 and it moves it to level 3 is that it doesn't take the clock all the way to the 2-minute warning with what he did. He took like 3 or 4 seconds additional off the clock such that they could not set up at the line of scrimmage in time to get a playoff. I mean, it's remarkably intelligent football.
It really is.
One of the greatest. All right, 2 minutes left of the game. A 4-1 ball out quick. Willis to Tyjae Spears. One of the really bad breakdowns for the Ravens because they had several missed tackles on this play. Pass left for 48. It was -3 plus 51. I have 4 circle. I think that's really a 2 circle. So it's between the numbers and the left hash, as I recall this play. Had some good blocks on the play. Got Petit Frere initially getting a block on Roquan Smith. Okonkwo blocked Mollett. I'll tell you one thing I thought I saw on the play was that Skoronski appeared to be illegally downfield when the pass was thrown.
Yeah, and that I also noticed that potentially. I would have been disappointed, I think, actually, if it had been called back, even as a Ravens fan, because I love football and I love Tyjae Spears, as I've mentioned several times on this podcast. This is a beautiful example of the level of play that he is going to raise to eventually. The Titans are going to seamlessly replace Derrick Henry here with a very different type of running back, but just as an effective type of effective running back. The Ravens, there were definitely breakdowns on this play from a Ravens perspective, but I would not be surprised if into the future, when Tyjae Spears is the feature back in this offense, that he will be leading the league in terms of forced missed tackles because of the way in which he moves. Yeah. The other thing on this play that is just outstanding from Spears is you can freeze frame it at one point when he has a convoy downfield, and you can look at his convoy, and they are mostly towards the left of the field. There's 3 offensive linemen that are downfield and ready to block for him. But if you look to the right, there is gaping open space for him to run into. But Spears makes the instantaneous sort of assessment that the gaping space, and this is the thing that I think backs like him, when they come out, don't get in terms of once they get into the open field, which is that you can still make decisions you can still almost read your keys. You can still make decisions based on the blocks downfield about maximizing the gain you're going to get. And instead of chasing out into the open field, where actually the Ravens probably would have had more of a chance at making one of those tackles, he stays with the 3 offensive linemen down the left-hand side, which slows him down slightly, but allows him to get into a situation where the Ravens are entirely compromised flowing across to that sideline of the field to make the play. And he's then able to cut back later on. And he's made that assessment because I saw him make that assessment at Tulane, obviously against lesser competition, but you could see it was going to translate into the pros. And this was a really great play to show the real potential of Spears. And like I said, I think the Titans have a really good one there.
Stone, a missed tackle at 28 yards. Queen, a missed tackle at 33 yards. Van Noy, a missed tackle at 35 yards. All of those plays were of the type where the player kind of ran themselves out of position versus Spears. So a lot of that is Spears reading opponent leverage or just being too sudden an athlete, possibly in some of these cases, to force the missed tackle. So I would agree with you. He's going to be a good one. Anyway, Roquan and Humphrey come back to make the tackle. It's always worth making a tackle, even down inside the red zone. And this was a 1st and goal from the 7.
Yes, sorry, Ken, just worth mentioning the play by Roquan, which was you often see Roquan make those big football intelligence plays, the plays at the line of scrimmage. This was pure hustle. Like, he got knocked down early in this play and gets back up and chases it down, and you've got to respect that. I think the other thing, just quickly to say on Spears, is I should have caveated. Obviously, the kid has no ACLs, so there is a chance at some point that's going to come back and hurt him. But there have been players throughout history in the NFL that have had no ACLs and had long and illustrious careers. One who blighted the Ravens for a long time in Hines Ward. So he's still got a chance even with that ailment.
All right, very good. 1:46 to play, 1st and goal. This is a case where Willis left a clean pocket, left an ATS situation. rolled out and was sacked by Van Noy for a 3-yard loss. Unfortunately, it was negated by defensive holding by Mollett away from the ball on Phillips. But still, a good play by Van Noy, a really bad play to leave the pocket by Willis, and he got kind of bailed out by that penalty.
Yeah, he really did. It was a bit of a gift for Van Noy, this, although I liked the sort of awareness to come back when he sort of rushed a bit away from the play. But yeah, a strange decision by Malik Willis here, who, as you mentioned before, had a lot of trouble with colour, and there wasn't even any colour really in this pocket. He just made a very odd decision.
So that 1st and 6 became a 1st and 3 after the penalty. We had a really good bull from Washington on the left guard Skoransky for a pressure. Clowney beat Petit Frere inside for sack -4 to follow it up. We also had Van Noy bullying the right tackle Hubbard to help phone booth the pocket. So nice combination, pressure leading to a sack for the Ravens, and a good job by all involved, even though it shows up in the best column for Clowney.
Yeah, and again, as I mentioned earlier, Clowney showing the way he's able to not just win with his fastball, he's able to win with some of his other pitches as a pass rusher, and that's really bodes well, I think, for the rest of the season.
Yeah, really nice to see Clowney. I like to see him get a bull rush. I like to see him get an outside move. But anytime an edge player makes a good inside move, spin move, hands, chop, whatever it might be, that's an A move. You really want to see those inside moves. All right, well, let's move ahead. 2nd and 7 after the sack with a clean pocket. Willis threw for Phillips in the end zone. DPI on Mollett this time gave them a first down. I don't think there was a lot of question about this DPI call. Do you feel it was ticky-tack at all?
No, I don't think so. I think this probably was. I wasn't too offended by this one.
This one was in the left side by the pylon, and it looked pretty bad to me, though Mollett obviously was upset by the call. That brought up 1st and 1 since it was in the end zone, and you think, well, they'll certainly score here. They run this option left, and it was a very well-disguised play initially. But Queen diagnosed it. He got back and set up a bird cage for Willis on that left side. He actually missed the tackle at -4. Willis slipped him. But then we had a block in the back from Tyjae Spears on Yassin to create the penalty. And Queen anyway got up and made the tackle for a loss of 1, even though he missed it at -4. Love to see that kind of hustle.
Yeah, and like you say, Willis, obviously the block in the back would have negated it, but Willis nearly got out of that compromising situation and nearly got in the end zone. A nice play by Queen.
Yeah, good general good pursuit by the Ravens to keep that play and keep Willis entrapped there and keep having him forced to juke and eventually be recaptured by Queen. 1:07 to go, 1st and 11. We have Clowney bullying the right tackle Hubbard again for pressure. That phone booth the pocket. You see another beautiful spin move from Van Noy. Now, Van Noy's only been here a couple of weeks, but his spin move has been really a revelation for this team. He's got to teach that to Owe. If he can get that over to Owe or leave it with Chuck Smith for him to teach you Owe, that'll just be fantastic when they get back. But finally, Van Noy scores. He missed one, of course, lost one to penalty, and this one he finally got credited with for sack -9.
Yeah, and nice. The nice thing from here for Clowney, I think, to show is the way he's sort of now just toying with that right tackle, who is now fearful of Clowney doing anything on him, and so the kind of little stutter step to the inside, then the outside, and then to come back through him. It's just it's a thing of beauty in terms of a pass rush plan if you kind of know and understand those things.
Yeah, when you're out athleted like that and you're an offensive tackle, it's got to be a very tough feeling because you almost have to overreact to the first move no matter what. And that's what I've been saying about Owe is, he's always going to be a greater athlete than the man across from him because left tackles are just not as great athletes as normal pass rushers. And Owe is a tremendously athletic pass rusher. And his first move is always going to cause an overreaction once he learns that. And can translate that into get off. And he doesn't even have to know what he's doing in some sense. Just know what your first move is, know what your second move is, plan it out in advance. Don't have to react to what the left tackle does necessarily, although that would be nice to get some hand play in there and make that happen. But just have, and here's A, here's B, and you're gone. I mean, it's Euro step. That's all it is in basketball is you're making a move and then making a second move and hiding it. And I don't understand why Oweh has been slow to improve in that particular area when he's otherwise such a promising player.
Yeah, I think it was the thing. I think we might have talked about it a couple of years back when he first came out. Was the rush plan just wasn't particularly well developed. He just didn't really have a clue, and it hasn't. It just has not continued to develop. And as you say, there is potential. There's so much potential there for that kind of fast ball and the sort of off speed pitches to be able to really. Build a really effective plan, even as you say, not even having to build specific plans for specific offensive linemen, just for himself, and it just hasn't quite got there yet. So yeah, it's interesting.
It really, it's a shame. 46 seconds left in the game. We finally get to the Titans' last offensive play. There's only been 46 of them in this game, though, and we're taking not including penalties, which there were a couple of in this game, just a couple. A 4-0 ATS play again, so Willis has one more opportunity to throw the football from a clean pocket. Throws the ball 20 yards in the end zone. Yassin has terrific coverage, though, of Hopkins. Nearly gets the pass defense. It looked to me as if it cleared Yassin and was tipped by Hopkins in this particular case. And then they get the third down. They kick the field goal right away since they're back at the 20-yard line. I don't know if that's the way I would have gone. But that did give him a chance to try the onside kick. Ravens covered, of course, and win the ball.
Yeah, it's an interesting decision to do that. I think it was almost like they wanted to keep it going for a little bit longer. The game, which was a strange one. I'm not sure that with the amount of time left on the clock, there was a chance that they were going to get down and score a touchdown from there. They're more likely to be able to get a field goal. So strange decision. Probably the best decision from a week Willis all day, which was to let's just throw it up for DeAndre Hopkins and see if he comes down with it. But coverage was too good from the Ravens.
Yeah. This has been a lot of fun. I tell you what, going through this, maybe we talk about a couple other things and we shut it down. Do you have time? If you don't, I will understand entirely.
Let's do a couple. That's fine.
We'll be real quick. In terms of packages, the Ravens only played two things, nickel and base. When they were nickel, they only allowed 3.3 yards per play in this game, 7.0 in the base defense. They've been remarkable in the nickel defense so far this year, which has been over 80% of the time, 81 actually. And I'm going to give you the statistics here really quickly because when they've been in nickel the entire season, they have allowed 3.9 yards per play. That's total, run and pass. And that is going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. They also got 5 sacks in this game. Talk about the pass rush very briefly. With a 4-man pass rush, a outstanding 48% overall pressure rate. If the Ravens can keep that up with primarily a 4-man rush, it's going to be terrific. But 5 4-man sacks is unbelievable for one football game.
Yeah, it really was, and the amount of pressure they got through that was great. Obviously, I think they will come up against more superior offensive lines, but this wasn't a bottom of the barrel offensive line. Like it's a middling offensive line. So I think it is. Really nice to see. Obviously, we talked about the game plan and the fact that the weapons in Tennessee aren't great. So you probably do want to go with that kind of strategy, and they may go with different strategies as they run through the season. But really encouraging that they were able to do that, get that done.
23 out of 27 times they used a 4-man pass rush in this game. When they did have a 4-man pass rush, let me get to the proper game here because I'm looking at the full season stats. 4.1 yards per pass play. So 23 plays for 94 yards, 5 sacks, 1 turnover. I don't think you're going to do much better than that. But they did not allow any yards on 2 plays, no net yards anyway, on 2 plays with 5 or 6 rushers. And the one time they rushed 7, they gave up a 10-yard play. So they did, in fact, do a little better, 2.5 yards per play on the 4 times they rushed more than 4. Everything is working, I think, is the easiest way I could put it in terms of what McDonald is dialing up. But the fact that the four-man pass rush has been as impressive as it has been terrific. I want to get into a couple of the deceptive elements as well. And you hit on some of this early. I think you hit on some key elements. I just want to give you a chance to comment. Only one off-ball blitz the entire day. And I define that as anyone who's at least 1.5 yards off the line of scrimmage or at least as far out as the slot corner coming on the blitz. It's very unusual that McDonald would not send linebackers to a greater degree than this, but we talked a little bit on the first show about Tannehill reading hot very well.
Yeah, I think that was definitely something that sort of came into it today, and it's been a feature of McDonald's game plans. Not this particular, the feature of McDonald's game plans has been his ability to game plan specifically for the offensive quarterback that he's facing at that time. Obviously we've had some very defensive coordinators in Baltimore that have been very idiosyncratic and will stick to their way or the highway. But McDonald really does sort of change his spots as the game goes. And this was another good example of that. They definitely had it felt like, I mean, I know you don't chart this, but it felt like they mugged the A gap a little bit less as well in this game from a
simulated pressure perspective.
Yeah.
They only had one simulated pressure the whole game, and I do count the number of times they dropped two. That's what I call a simulated pressure. The number of times they dropped one, I have it charted here, but there weren't very many of them, and most of the times they dropped Roquan Smith from the middle several times. I'm noting 1, 2, 3, 4 times they dropped Roquan Smith from the line of scrimmage to drop into coverage. Most of the time, it's the edge player. It's Harrison or Van Noy who's the single dropper even. So it's not. You're absolutely right that what they did in terms of simulated pressure is less than. I think they had 0 in one game this year already, but they just were not. They were showing here's what we got to Tannehill and then to Malik Willis later in the game. The only thing they really messed around with was the stunts. They had 8 singles and 2 doubles there, 6 pressures on those 12 plays, and those 6 pressures were not small ones, 3 sacks and 3 quarterback hits.
Yeah, it just felt like the stunt game was just working so well. And I think it was a feature, I think, of the fact that this offensive line, while its component parts are reasonably solid as a whole, as a unit, it just did not deal well with that movement all day long.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I think in particularly the Ravens are very impressive at peeling that second blocker and getting the under a good opportunity. But they also got the over some good opportunities in this game too. So just a beautiful, you love to see a game of pressure like this. They had only come along once in a while. You probably remember that Tennessee game in 2018 where they had the 11 sacks. That was one where Mariota was running for his life the entire day. And honestly, he lost any will to even look downfield late in that game, and they were just piling up sack after sack.
Yeah.
All right. If there's any individual player you'd like to talk about, please do that. I think we're going to have to maybe put off the mailbag this time just because we don't really have time for it. But is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
I don't think so, Ken. Yeah, I feel like we hit every player that I wanted to hit. So I'm pretty good.
Do MVPs? Could we do that real quick?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Give me a 3-2-1 on MVPs. I want to go to my article, make sure I get this right.
I should have prepared this in advance because I definitely know what my 1 is. But do you want to go with 3 first?
I will go with my number 3 guy, Jadeveon Clowney. Wonderful day of pressure. Had 6 pressures as I charted. I understand why PFF has more because they're going to say some of those plays where he forced Willis, particularly out of the pocket, were pressured as well. And I completely understand that. They had him for 9 in this game. So wonderful game from him, but he's my number 3.
So Geno Stone would be my number 3. I think definitely maybe not the sort of highest volume snap game for him, but really high quality snaps when he did play. And
they needed him in there to replace Williams late in that game. Boy, last year and this year, I don't know what the Ravens would have done without Geno Stone to get through. All right, I'll move on to my number 2 guy, was Kyle Van Noy. Kind of got the short end of the sack stick in this game. Obviously, Madubuike and Clowney did more, but Van Noy had a wonderful pressure game, and a lot of it was individual pressure, which he has a great spin move. He's terrifically dangerous in terms of stunt. What a great pickup.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because there are a number of, you can make an argument for a number of guys here, and I have no qualms with your first 2 guys. My Number 2 guy would be Patrick Queen, who I thought had a really great game in this game and sort of typified the improvements in his game over the course of the last year and a bit. In this game, it sort of was a really nice game from him.
No argument at all there. 3 drive ending plays from Patrick Queen. I'm with you all the way. He's on my honorable mention list, along with a couple other guys we'll mention in a second. I'll go with my number 1 guy, Justin Madubuike. I'm guessing we have the same guy at this point.
We do. Yeah.
I thought even on Queen's sack, I thought he probably deserved a share of that one as well. So he could have had 2.5 sacks. Madubuike now second in the entire NFL among interior defensive linemen with 4.5 sacks. The only guy with more is Chris Jones. Aaron Donald, a pedestrian 2.5 sacks, is sitting back there. I don't know if Aaron Donald's played every game or not, but it's always nice when you're 2 sacks ahead of Aaron Donald.
Absolutely. I think we mentioned early on and right throughout the podcast that this was a game for me which showed how well Madubuike is starting to put together all of the elements of the game, not just the raw explosive power that he's had going back to college, but also now the technical refinement in his game and the ability to process what he's seeing from the offense is all coming together, and he's starting to rise to the type of player that we expected him to be when he started showing those flashes early in his rookie year.
I agree, and we cannot be more fortunate to having this happen now. We can't wish for 4th-year players to just have modest years or cry like hell for the Ravens to extend them. It's just not possible with every player. And when 4th-year players play well, it's the best thing they can do for you is play their way out of town, give you a great comp pick, and hopefully you win from that. And with players like Paul Kruger and McPhee and others, it's just been part of the circle of life to let those guys go. Matthew Judon comes to mind. Great organizations that draft very well, as the Ravens consistently have. They haven't given up their draft picks. They are consistently forced into these heartbreaking decisions about 4th-year players and not being able to extend them. And unfortunately, that's probably going to happen with at least 2 of the big 3 that we talked about on this show on the defense.
Yeah, and it's that player development as well, isn't it, Ken? Because it's it's sticking with it and continuing to push these guys to get to the point where they are able to fulfill their potential. And as we talked about, I'm really, really happy for Patrick Queen, especially because some probably went through some really tough times with the Roquan trade and then the contract that went to Roquan and all of the sometimes justified, but also the sort of criticism that he got as a former 1st-round pick as an inside linebacker. It just really happy that he's sort of taken the what was the hand that was dealt to him and has said to himself, you know what, I am going to control what I can control and play to the level that I know I can play to and get my life-altering second contract, whether that's with the Ravens or with somebody else. I'm going to force the Ravens to make a decision. And I just think that's a real testament to him and his character. To have risen to that occasion.
It is the right choice, and it is the only choice. And whoever he's got advising him, whoever he's talking to, I know Patrick Queen is somebody who's been very reactive to what's happened on Twitter and whatnot. We saw during the draft that he changed his Twitter profile after the Ravens drafted Kyle Hamilton at 1:04 a.m. that night. So it's the kind of thing, I don't follow that, but Kyle Barber mentioned it to me. And it's the kind of thing that people are watching. So, the best thing you could probably do is to turn off Twitter. I know you don't want to do it, but or go to some private account where you're talking to your friends, or maybe just text your friends during the draft and get upset about it there. Text your agent. That's what he's paid for in a way. But oh my God, don't change your social media. Don't tell everybody how upset you are about the thing, even if you are. I got 2 questions I want to get to quickly, if you're okay with that, James.
Yeah. Real
quickly. So first question is from Dow1024, DAU1024. He says, did you notice the Ravens showing more pre-snap single high looks than usual, either from the start of the game or after Hamilton Williams went out? I think we kind of addressed this one. Definitely a lot of more of pre-snap single high with Hamilton being brought down into the box as a linebacker.
Yeah, it was definitely what we saw, and it was definitely a feature of a game plan specifically for the Titans, specifically because of that running game. That was the only way. as a defensive coordinator in the NFL, you kind of got to pick your poison. And most weeks you've got some impossible decisions to make in terms of which poison you're going to pick. This week, it wasn't that impossible a decision. You pick the Titans passing game as your outside of DeAndre Hopkins as your poison, and you roll with that. And that's exactly what Mike McDonald did. And that did call for a lot more single high than we've seen in recent weeks from him.
Great adjustment. I think it worked out well, obviously, despite the fact they gave up some yards on the ground. I thought it worked out pretty well. It was mostly one big run play that burned them. Got two questions that are related to the pass rush. I'll give them both together. At Nikki622A says, our pass rush looked unstoppable this weekend. It is noted that Tennessee has a weak offensive line, an okay offensive line. Should we be encouraged by their performance, or is it inflated because of a weaker opponent? Also, which position to target for trade? I'll give you the second question that goes with this, very closely related. At JR Morgan 16 says, should the Ravens try to sign Frank Clark, or do you think their pass rush has been effective enough that any resources should be used to solidify other parts of the roster?
Yeah, so I wouldn't give too big an adjustment against the Titans' offensive line. I think it's an offensive. I think it was the game plan was very effective to get home. So I would say that sort of took advantage of the weaknesses of the Titans' offensive line. As I said before, I don't think the component parts are that bad. Like I don't think they have an outstanding offensive lineman, but I also don't think they have real huge weak links. There are a few sort of iffy areas on that line, but I wouldn't give a huge adjustment. They are going to face better offensive lines down as they go through the season, but I also think it is an encouraging sign. I don't think we need to temper ourselves too much with that. In terms of Frank Clark, I would not go after Frank Clark at this point. I would certainly spend that resource elsewhere. I think the Ravens have a number of places that I think they could go in terms of spending that resource. And I think edge at the moment for me is towards the bottom of the list of things that they could address with the resource that they potentially could have. And I wouldn't be going after Frank Clark at this point.
Yeah, so I'll say two places where I think they could improve, and they're off the beaten path things. I wouldn't go to corner. I wouldn't go to edge. I certainly wouldn't go to a place like inside linebacker, and no way in hell would I go to running back. I think you got to see what Keaton Mitchell has before you go to the Saquon Barkley. Let's get the next greatest wide receiver, whatever it is. There are two positions where I think the Ravens actually need help that they should probably try and address. And the first is they're going to need to find a safety this week. And as much as unglamorous as that is, the Ravens' defensive success has been formulated basically on how that back end looks. And there are guys they can have cheap that they can address. The other place, a lot more expensive to address, is offensive tackle. I think the Ravens need another guy who can legitimately play left tackle, not right tackle. They've got guys who can fill in there. Maybe it's Cleveland, maybe it's even McCary, but they've got guys who can fill in at right tackle. They need a left tackle, and that may be a decision they make over the next 2 weeks, watching how Ronnie Stanley plays and deciding if he's still fit for the NFL at this point, if he's going to be around next year. And I think the Ravens could make a big move in terms of possibly even trading a first-round pick for a left tackle who would be their left tackle of the future if they decide to go that way.
Yeah, personally, I think you're right. I think if they have the luxury of waiting a couple of weeks, that would be great to just see a slightly bigger sample size on this version of Ronnie Stanley, just to see. But I agree that I probably would sink some resource into depth on the offensive line, potentially. I probably actually would put depth on the interior defensive line above that at this point mid-season, just because of the possibly the cost benefit in terms of getting somebody on that. I mean, it's a lot easier to fill in a safety where I think you're right, they need immediate help. But potentially interior defensive line might be a place to look in terms of depth for the stretch run.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I agree with that. With the loss of Urban is potentially extremely costly, but Urban wasn't a guy who would take a big snap load anyway. First of all, he's a 5-tech, and you got other limitations there. Even as a 3-5 guy that you don't want him in there on every play. What I'd be interested to see is if the Ravens would go after a nose tackle again, even though it seems like they have 2 nose tackles on the team. I really like the idea of Washington being used primarily as a 5, but a 3-5 split, and then having Travis Jones move out to play some of that 3, because I think he'd give other defenders a lot of trouble on early downs, get Madubuike more rested, and boy, he's going to need that rest if he's going to pile up the kind of sack total people are hoping for.
Yeah, 100% agree.
All right. James, just a pleasure to talk football with you. I wish we could go on for 2 more hours, but I know it's getting late in London right now. Really appreciate you coming on. Tell folks where they can find your work online.
No problem, Ken. It's always a blast. So my handle on Twitter is @NFL Ogden, which you can find me. You hear me regularly every week on the UK Ravens podcast, which releases sort of Thursday, Friday towards the end of the week. And every year you will get a draft guide from me, which looks at the best prospects from college and how they fit with the Ravens. Because I think that's sort of missing from a lot of draft guides out there, where they don't sort of evaluate for specific teams, and it's pretty hard to evaluate a prospect agnostically without a team in mind. So I try and do that for our team, for the Baltimore Ravens, and put that out there every year. So watch out for that coming, obviously, April next year.
Great stuff. And I'm going to be right after this trying to get James booked for another show later this season. I know he's a difficult schedule with his young child, but really appreciate the time you've given to this. And I thought just a terrific show. Other folks out there, if you'd like to be on a Film Study short, hit me up. DMs are always open on Twitter. You know the deal by now, but I'm really interested always in finding new content, new things to look at, new thought experiments. Give me your idea for a show, and we'll talk it over and find how we can make that into an interesting 20 to 30 minutes of content for folks. James, thanks again for joining me.
Thanks, Ken.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.